Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to inform the witnesses that I am the only member of Congress on this subcommittee that actually lives on the border. I represent El Paso, Texas. I'm a third-generation border resident. My children are fourth-generation border residents. I don't live hundreds of miles from the border. I live on the border, literally. And nobody wants an orderly immigration process more than those of us who have built our lives on the border. But I'll tell you one way we're not gonna get there. It's with performative hearings such as these. If we truly want to address our nation's immigration challenge and opportunity, we would do that through reasonable legislation, through compromise, and through comprehensive immigration reform. And I'd like to invite all of my colleagues on this subcommittee to look at a bipartisan immigration bill, the Dignity Act, that my colleague, Republican Maria Elvira Salazar, and I introduced. That would be a good way to begin talking about this. But instead, here we are engaging in what is my Republican colleague's first step in impeaching Secretary Mayorkas. Not because of any reason that they've laid out, but simply because this is Speaker McCarthy's gift to the extremists in his conference. Let's look realistically at the numbers. And Mr. Reichland-Melnick, thank you so much, because the American Immigration Council actually has produced this great chart. I've altered it a little bit, but what I'd like for the public, for the American public and our panelists to note is that actually numbers started increasing long before President Biden took office, long before the election even. And there was only one time when there was a precipitous drop in immigration, in apprehension, and that was right when COVID-19 hit. And that's when the border was shut down. But the chart that the American Immigration Council put together shows, and Mr. Reichland-Melnick, I believe you got these numbers directly from the Department of Homeland Security, and it demonstrates that not any of the deterrence measures that were put forth by the Trump administration actually deterred immigration. COVID did, but shortly after the border was reopened, those numbers started climbing right back up. That would tell us that we should be acting together in a bipartisan way on reasonable solutions. But instead, again, here we are focused on performance. Mr. Chair, I'd like unanimous consent to enter into the record a ProPublica article about family separation.
Yes, without objection.
And I'd actually like to play the audio included in this article.
You're welcome to do with your time as you please.
Okay? All right, well, I'll play it from my phone.
Bueno, aquí tenemos una orquesta.
Mr. Wolf, do you recognize this audio?
I recall that audio, yes.
And you were working at DHS at the time that this audio was taken, is that correct?
I was at the department, yes.
This is audio from the horrific Trump administration policy of separating children from their parents at the border, a policy that has caused immeasurable trauma on children. And Mr. Wolf, was Ms. Nielsen, when she was the secretary and implemented this horrific policy, did the Republican Party attempt to impeach her?
So I would disagree with the premise of that question.
Yes or no?
It's
no.
not a policy.
So I will reclaim my time. No, the Republican Party never tried to impeach her, nor did they try to impeach you. despite the fact that you were an architect of this policy, despite the fact that you were in place when the insurrectionists took over our capital. You resigned because of the illegitimacy of the acting secretary role that you were playing on behalf of the Trump administration, yet no one tried to
Young lady's
impeach you.
time's
I
expired, but
yield
since
back.
that was an ad hominem attack, I'll give Mr. Wolf.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
So I think it's a useful conversation. So let's talk about children. Let's talk about protecting children. Let's talk about the 360,000 children that have come across this border.
Point of order, on
in the
whose
last
time is he
2 years.
speaking?
She made an attack on him.
Point of order, on whose time is Mr. Wolf speaking?
Ms. Escobar's time.
Ms. Escobar yielded back her time.
She made an
yielded
ad
back her
hominem attack
time.
on Mr. Wolf, and I thought it
Mr.
was
Chairman.
important to
She
give him an
yielded back her
opportunity
time. He
to
can speak on
respond.
someone else's
But the
time.
gentleman, I will recognize the gentleman's point well taken.
Thank you.
And proceed to Mr. Nels.
Thank you.